Hey, everybody. We'll get started here in a minute. You know how Zoom things are. They starting on time? That never happens. Things take a little bit. Go grab your coffee, go grab your drinks, whatever the heck you want to do to stay awake. I got a lot to share today. You are at, so make sure you're in the right place. I once went into a college class, by the way, and was totally in the wrong room. So I always make sure to start this way. You are at the Convert Every Single Lead webinar. We're going to be talking about some mindset pieces, some tactical takeaways on how you can convert way more leads than you're currently doing in your database. Again, we're going to get started here in a moment. Let some more people trickle on in. We all happen to work in real estate, which means that 3 minutes late is right on time. To kind of give you a background about me, first off, I'm Robby T with Hatch Coaching. If you don't know who I am, that's me. A couple things that you should know. I started in this game, y'all, as an ISA. And if you don't know what an ISA is, it's an inside sales agent. So essentially, my whole job on Hatch Realty's team was to call and engage with leads to find out, and by leads, I mean pay-per-click leads, Zillow leads. Actually, I used to call expireds, canceled, random people, circle prospecting. I would door knock. I did all of it. And my whole job was to find opportunities, turn people that didn't know who we were into opportunities for our agents. And then our agents' jobs, of course, was to win their business and help them sell homes. I was in production. If you guys may want to write down some numbers, for about two and a half years before I got into the coaching game. And I got into the game, the real estate game 10 years ago. I've been in the coaching / sharing ideas game for, gosh, coming up on 7 years now. But when I was an ISA, I made over 100,000 phone calls. I spoke to 10,000 people, set 1,000 appointments that led to almost 500 closings. And the funny thing is, y'all, is when I got into the game, it was 2013. The market wasn't fun. It wasn't glamorous. Don't get me wrong. It was nowhere near as scary as 2007, 2008, 2009. But it wasn't an easy game. And I'll be very, very frank. I'm thankful for it. I think one of the worst things that has happened is the game was so dang easy for the fake 2 years, the fake market between 2020. There was federal stimulus everywhere, money everywhere, unprecedented demand with unprecedented limited amount of supply. And the game was so easy. And we got to start here today, y'all. There's a lot I want to get to. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about where I think the market's going. We're going to talk about the mindset I think you need to have to thrive in this market to convert every lead possible. And I'm going to give you some very, very simple takeaways on how to handle objections and then how to actually turn good conversations into appointments. But let's start here. Again, Robby T for those that just joined, because there's some of you still trickling in. And I'm your host today, and we're at the Convert Every Single Lead webinar. Let's start here, y'all. This market's not going to get any easier. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The reality is that high rates paired, frankly, just high rates has created massive gridlock, and rates aren't going to go down quickly. They're not going to go down anytime soon. The best case scenario is we see lower rates at 5 to 6%, 12, 18, 24 months from now. And I think this is really important because a lot of people want it to get easier. They want us to go back to that fake market where the game was easy and transactional, where objections didn't really exist. And that simply isn't going to happen. And I don't actually think it'll probably ever happen again. It took the convergence of some crazy forces to cause that market to happen. But what I do know has happened is a lot of people have the wrong mindset where they want things to get easier instead of doing what is necessary and hard. And they're still using 2020 methods and strategies when we're now in 2023 in a totally different market. And if you want to survive and thrive, or if you want to survive and then thrive and win in this market and convert as many leads possible, you have to change your mindset. this market's not going to change. The hoop got raised from that little kid's hoop during that crazy, stupid market to 10 feet. And the reality is this. I just want you to really reflect on this question, because I know most people are doing nowhere near the business that you were accustomed to. Most of us, or most numbers when I look across the industry, is markets are selling about 30, 40, some markets 50% less total homes than they were before during the crazy COVID market era. And there's one question I want you to sit on and chew on for a second. It's, who's moving right now? Who are the people that are taking action, that are selling their homes, that are purchasing their homes? And if it tracks with anything I've seen firsthand and what I've heard and what I know in my heart and gut, the reality is the people that are highly motivated to move right now are also the most highly emotionally impacted. You see, what was really interesting during that fake market was we got away from being people-centered. Let's just call it what it was, which is really tough, to be very honest, for me. It was really, really difficult because I teach and preach a very human-centric approach. And I saw most people moving towards a transactional approach. Go show homes, open doors. And that worked because there was no resistance. There was no resistance about the market. The market wasn't scary. The worst objections we had to deal with was, do I write an offer at 15% over asking or 20? Like, that's not an objection. You see, objections are people having fears that limit them from taking their next steps. They have these ideas that scare them from doing something. Now, I need to make sure that we're understanding that there's a difference here between fears to conditions, okay? Fears are just thoughts that consume our mind. I think I don't want to do something because of this. Conditions are, I can't do something because of this. Here's a really good example. There are simply some people maybe that are underwater. If you bought a higher end price home, some people are simply underwater. They can't sell it. Albeit it's not a ton of people, but that's a condition. Somebody who simply can't afford it because interest rates for them are at 8%, 7.5%. That's what we're doing, is we're separating the two. And y'all, I need you all to wake up to this. Not conditions, but objections are normal. Objections are normal. We all just forgot that. We all played in a game for 2 years where we forgot that objections were normal. And there's two primary fear-based objections that I see. One is surrounding the market, what's happening in the market. And now, of course, that's interest rates. That's tied to prices. That's tied to the economic narrative. Are we going to go into a recession? Are we going to crash? So that's all economic, right? So there's fear surrounding the marketplace. And then there's another fear. And that fear is of you, the salesperson. Not because you're bad, not because you've done something wrong, not because you're a bad human being or you have ill intent. People traditionally simply fear salespeople. And again, I'll just kind of prove this to you. If I were to ask you the top 5 words most people think to describe salespeople, what do you think they are? Do you think it's hardworking and kind and humble and those positive, optimistic, necessary type words? No. There was actually a study done by this that Dan Pink references in a really great book, To Sell is Human. And he talks about how the top words to describe salespeople are things like pushy, gross, manipulative, annoying, not trustworthy. And the reality, y'all, is This applies to everyone simply because we are lumped in with salespeople. Let me give another perspective. If you walk into a car dealership or a furniture store, when a salesperson walks up to you, do you just simply open up and say, yeah, I want to do this, this, and this. These are the things I want to do, even though you probably have it all in your head? Of course not. You resist. When they come up and say, what brought you out today? You say, I'm just looking, just checking things out, even though you might have full 1,000,000% intent of buying that furniture set right over there, or that car on the other end of the dealership. And why do we do this? I want everybody to write this down. People are afraid of the salesperson because they're afraid of you selling them something they don't want. People are afraid of the market because they're afraid of buying something and the value goes down. If you really think about it, the reality is the biggest fears that they're having is buyer's remorse. Some type of buyer's or seller's remorse. And most people, of course, that are selling or buying in some way, shape, or form. I bring this up because I don't know about you guys, but most of the people that don't have to move aren't moving. And there's a whole thought I have about this, which is when markets go through extreme swings like we're going through now, where it went from normal rates to extremely low rates and money everywhere, to a very tight economic climate where people are nervous and afraid and rate gridlocked. And rate gridlock simply means, like my story is, I have a house at 2.25% or something like that, under 3. Man, if I were going to go buy a new home at 7.5%, that's a really tough thing to swallow. So I just push that idea down. I may want an extra bedroom, but I'm not going to, in this environment, going to go and do something. And what we all need to understand about that is that creates a rubber banding effect. There are a good amount of people that maybe have had a kid that need more space, that want to be in a different neighborhood, that want to be in a different school, but they're simply delaying it. And what's happening is all those delays stack. All right. And the longer we're in an environment where people are gridlocked like this, the further this pulls back. And the reality is that when things normalize, it hits. This is probably the biggest reason I've been naming. I don't think the market's going to crash. I really think, for the most part, that the market probably already would have. When you go from interest rates from sub 3% to 7% in less than a year, that's a hell of a lot of pain instantly. The reality in this marketplace, y'all, is that we have more buyers that want their own home than we have supply. All the numbers show it. And I think the biggest thing that we all know inherently is that we're in the midst of a housing crisis in the United States, meaning we don't have enough units for the amount of people that want them. And therefore, we have an affordability crisis. And if you own homes or you own residential real estate, it's a fun thing to hear, I guess, but it's really, 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 really tough for a lot of people. My point to tie this all together is this market's not going away anytime soon. The question I asked you earlier is, who is moving right now? Who is the most highly motivated to move? And I think we can all agree that it is almost always the highly emotional. It is people that have a lot of pain that they're running from. Because I don't know about you guys, but if you're going through a divorce, I highly doubt you're going to keep that home. Stay with that person. Stay in that house. When someone passes away, oftentimes it doesn't make sense for that person to stay in the home or to live in that place. It's a reminder of the former partner, or let's say they were living alone. You, as their children, want to sell the home. You see, we are in a very unique industry that even when all the numbers say, hey, it may not make sense to do something right now, A lot of people buy and sell homes not because of the numbers, but because of life events. And what's so interesting about this is how it's always been, except for the stupid 2 years where it was just absolute euphoria in the marketplace. It's always been like this. Most people in real estate are buying and selling because of some emotional reason. In a normal marketplace, when things are balanced, it's usually about half and half. Half are buying for really exciting reason, babies, right? Diapers or diplomas. And on the flip side, the other half are selling because of death or debt or divorce or disaster. And what we just simply need to wake up to, y'all, is we transactionalized people for 2 years and we got away from humanizing them. And if you're still using a transactional mindset with your leads, you will not get transactions. The only reason that worked in that 2-year bubble was the numbers made it so stupid not to buy a house. When you can get money for free, when you can get sub 3%, it makes it so easy to go and do. You see, I think we have to reestablish our heartbeat in the lead conversion game. If you want to convert every lead possible, I think it starts above all else with your mindset. And that mindset needs to be, how am I going to make people feel heard, seen, and valued? Because what I know is that when people are emotional, that if they don't feel those things, they run away. You see, what people are actually craving right now is they need to feel safe. In order for someone to feel comfortable enough telling you the truth of what's going on, what's motivating them, the pain they're going through, the pleasure they're pursuing, any of it, they need to feel safe. And y'all, in this environment right now, they're afraid of you because you're a freaking salesperson, and they're afraid of the market because it freaking is scary. We need to be empathetic to that. We need to recognize that's normal. It's human. And I think the people that are going to weather this storm are those that are investing in their EQ, their emotional intelligence, the ones that focus on the heartbeat, the ones that meditate before they start making calls so they know that they're in a Zen place. So they're focused to make people feel safe, make them feel seen, heard, and valued. The irony of this, by the way, is this strategy always works. Albeit, do others win being transactional in a stupid fake market like the last couple of years? Yes. Are those people going to be around in 18, 24 months? I doubt it. We have to put the leads, their stories, their heartbreaks, their thoughts, their desires, their motives at the center of everything. I think we have to switch our whole mindset from trying to tell people things, trying to convince them, trying to sell them that now is a great time to go and purchase. And not because it's incorrect. I'm not saying don't do it because it's wrong. Very frankly, nobody knows what the hell's going to happen in a marketplace. Okay. If you all did, you wouldn't be on this webinar. If I did, I wouldn't be on this webinar. Nobody knows. Nobody knows where things are going to go. That's the world. We do have some things in history which show that if you hold real estate for the long term, it's usually a really, really great decision. But the reality is most people aren't buying a freaking house because it's the best financial investment. They're buying it because they need another bedroom for their kids. They're downsizing because their bodies can't keep up the maintenance of a home. And what we have to do when I see lead converters at their absolute best, their heartbeat is one where they're absolutely centered on finding out without judgment, without attachment, what is it that this human being is feeling? And a lot of people lost this. A lot of people came into the game in the last 2 years and they didn't have to learn to do these things. And what's so funny is when I talk to people that played the game prior to the COVID market, they're like, oh yeah, this is very reminiscent. This is what I was doing before and killing. And then I got busy. I had to run quickly. And you know what I kept hearing? I don't have time for that. And I think it's like a defense mechanism, right? Don't get me wrong. People were running around like crazy. It was nuts. You'd have to write 15 offers on a home to get accepted. It was insane. But people cut out what I think is the most important thing. You see, I have a coaching client and a fellow coach at Hatch Coaching and a brother and dear friend in Patrick Keller. And Patrick, his business will be up this year. He'll sell between, depending on how things shape up, 150 to 170 homes himself, y'all, with a partner type model that Eric and I have teached and preached. And I think he's one of the very few people that refuse to bend and cave in to the scarcity mindset that he had to cut out the depth of his conversations with his clients and leads. He's one of the few that persisted, and even when things were crazy, instead of cutting important conversations out of the process, he leveraged himself so he had time to put that at the center of everything that he was doing. Because that's who PK is. At his heart, he cares deeply about humans. And y'all, if there's one big thing we need more of right now, in addition to doing more work and not being lazy and a different mindset, is we need to find our love for other humans again. We need to find our empathy to help and love and care for others. Find our heartbeat again. Because you can make all the damn calls you want. You can shoot all the texts in the world, emails. You can do all and put all the effort in. But if people don't feel like they matter, none of it matters. If people don't feel like they matter, none of it matters. What I'm seeing in the marketplace right now is so many people that let's just call it what it is. So many people, their sales are down. They're selling less homes. They're making less money. Their income's down 30, 40, 50%. And my biggest fear for a lot of those people is when your income goes down that much, it's really easy to get desperate. It's really easy to start seeing the world through a scarcity lens. You take that paired with the narratives and the media, and we just all need to remember, right? The media has one job. It's not to give you the absolute truth and nothing but the truth, and to share really positive, uplifting, optimistic messages. No, their job is to sell ads. And the only way they can sell ads and make a profit is by gaining clicks and gaining eyeballs. And unfortunately, there's a part of our brain, y'all, the human nature, where we aren't attracted to fun, sexy, optimistic stories. So many people have tried, and unfortunately, they have failed. The only company that maybe has somewhat figured this out is Disney and a few others. But for the most part, the media that sells is not fun, sexy, uplifting stories. It's the stuff that scares us. People don't click the story that says the market's great, things are good. No, people click the one that says the market's crashing, things are scary. It's just how our brains work as humans. And you can get mad at media about it. You can do that. I just think it's really displaced because they're just literally tapping into the psychology of our brains. But you take that reinforcement paired with already not making the money you want. And here's what I know happens is You become one sleazy, salesy, desperate, sales breath smelling, crappy ass salesperson. And what happens when we're feeling these things, when we're talking to our clients or talking to our leads, is we have an agenda. And that agenda is, man, we're broke. We need money. We need to sell more homes. And there's two big things here that happen. I want everybody to write this down that I'm really, really afraid of. Number one is you don't see the truth. You see some discolored version of the truth that serves you. Instead of seeking clarity and understanding where they're coming from, you hear what you want to hear. In psychology, we call this confirmation bias. You see, when we're starting to feel a little more insecure, when we need a little more money, what happens is we maybe don't ask those questions that maybe challenge a perspective, not tell them that they should or shouldn't do something, but something like, are you sure that's what you want? Those types of questions go out the window. The challenging type questions that help you create more clarity disappear. The other big thing, the second big thing along this that causes you to be discolored is you stop digging deeper. You get a surface level yes, and you move on. And you can only get your hand burnt so many times by that until you realize, man, I need to dig a little bit deeper. And I think most people are afraid to do it. They're afraid that by digging deeper, maybe they won't actually say yes, or maybe it won't be a maybe. Maybe it'll become a no. And y'all, I think you have to put at the center of this in your mindset that you have to make this process, these conversations, everything you're doing, not about yourself, but about them. About making them feel safe, about understanding their truth, about creating clarity about their needs, wants, and desires. Those are the people that are still winning right now. Because it's those people that are making the most emotionally motivated and vulnerable safe enough to talk about what they're going through. And if you can get them talking about what they're going through, it becomes so much easier for us to collaborate on creating a solution. We have to get back to humanizing these people. These are humans that are going through some really tough things. We have to let go of the attachment to the outcome of us wanting to make money, because what happens with it is it backfires. And when you want to make more money and people can sense that, you make less money. It has the unintended consequence of getting you the opposite of what you want. If you're failing to slow down and get your mind right and let go of the attachment to the outcome, you are discoloring everything you're hearing. And how can you help somebody if you're not simply hearing what they want? Doesn't it just make sense? It makes it a lot more difficult. The second thing that happens when we're feeling afraid or nervous or when we're attached to the outcome is we become pushy. Not only do we see things in a discolored lens, we start pushing the wrong solutions. We start pushing things that we think they want to hear. We start telling them things. We start selling them. And what's so ironic about it is, again, it has this unintended consequence that it causes people's walls to go up. And a lot of you are going to get confused about this. Because what I've noticed when people are not a fan of how you're engaging with them is people are too kind to tell you to screw off and hang up the phone or F off. People don't do that. Rather, they give you this, what's known by Chris Voss as, it's known as a confirmation yes. Because what happens is you end up saying something like, well, I'm going to put you on a safe search. Is that something you find some value in? And they say yes. And they don't say yes because they have any intention of working with you or giving you any more information or buying a home or selling a home with you. They say yes for one simple reason. And it's to get the hell off the phone with you, to disengage from you. And it's why so many of you, what you're probably seeing is you might have these conversations, you find out what they want, you set them up on a safe search, and you never hear from them again. And it's because they were simply saying yes as their way of saying no. And what we have to do, y'all, is we have to stop pushing the wrong solutions because we don't understand the problems. Let's talk about how we handle things when people give you fear-based objections. And I hope this is salient, I should say. I hope it's resonating with you all. I hope it's hitting. I hope it's, frankly, for some of you all, a punch in the face. Because I think it's what people need to hear right now. The next thing I want to talk about, though, is very tactical, which is what the heck do we do if we make people feel safe and they still give us fear-based objections? Because it's going to happen. And again, fear-based objections are things like, I want to wait till rates go down. I want to wait till the market crashes. I want to wait till there's a new president. Basically, it's anything that is, I want to wait on some uncontrollable factor called X to change. Here's what I traditionally see people do. There's 3 strategies that I see people fall into that are really, really bad strategies that you should write down. Even if you've heard me talk about this before, you need to do it again. Number 1 is when people give you a fear-based objection, you believe them. Number 1 is you believe them. You believe that when they say they're going to wait until there's a new president, you just take it at face value and say, all right, no worries, I'll follow up right before the next election. And there's a major, major, major problem with this, y'all. And it's simply this, is that traditionally people are going to overinflate their economic fears towards you because you're some sleazy, gross, annoying salesperson that they don't know yet. I think the worst thing that you can do, or one of the worst, all 3 of these are going to be pretty bad. One of the worst things you can do is simply believe them. And we'll talk about what you can do differently in a little bit. Number 2, the second big thing that I see people do is they use my 3 favorite words in the wrong context. Tell me more. You see, what happens when you ask somebody to tell you more or explain a little bit further or share more about their fear about the presidency or interest rates or the market, what happens is that fear, whether it's rooted in reality or not, that fear grows, it gets bigger. You see, focusing on the fear begets more fear. And I think it's pretty easy to say that if you're having conversations where you're talking about fear, I think we all inherently know that fear creates resistance. Strategy number 3 that does not work is something that I call TED talking or debating, which is when they say something about how rates are too dang high and they don't want to do something, you instantly punch back and you say, I got that, but did you know that compared to the 80s, rates are actually pretty good. In the 80s, they're like 18%. Now they're only 7 to 8. They're actually pretty good. And you can always just buy the house, marry the house, and date the rate, refinance later. And what's so fascinating, I want everybody to understand that what I'm saying can technically be right. Everything I'm saying can be the best TED Talk in the world. But what we need to understand is that when people are afraid, they're not in a mental place to hear it. You see, this is something that in psychology is known as dysregulation. They are dysregulated. When people are focusing on fear, they're dysregulated. And when they're dysregulated, they can't use the logical part of your mind, or they can't use the logical part of their mind. So even though you're spitting fire, straight cash, some of the best facts, hey, I got these programs, they're sitting there saying, get me the hell out of here. I'm afraid. Their brain can't hear it yet. Which leads me to strategy number 4. Strategy number 4 is something that I call the pivot. And I think it's the only way to help people feel safe. Because don't we realize that when people are giving you fear-based objections, they're not feeling safe. And of course, we can't control variables. We can't do all those things. And I think through what we're going to talk about here, what you realize is our job is to figure out, is this a fear or is this a condition? That's usually what will happen here in this next strategy. It's something I call the pivot. The pivot has 2 key components. Component number 1 is we first have to acknowledge what people say. Acknowledge, just to be very clear, doesn't mean that we agree with what they're saying. Doesn't mean that we even affirm it or rephrase it. Literally, all I'm saying is acknowledge. Acknowledging means something like, hey, man, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Or I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I'm not even going to say those words back. It's simply acknowledging what is it that they've said. And the second key piece is circling back to their core motivation. So the second piece is asking another motivation-themed question. So it sounds something like, Eric, I appreciate you sharing those thoughts with me. But help me understand this, Eric. What had you kind of thinking about making a move in the first place? You see, what I found is that when we pivot like this, what happens is that fear slowly shrinks because it's no longer the focus. And in psychology and in politics and communication, there's something known as framing. And what we need to recognize is that you can control the focus of the conversation, what is at the center of the conversation, through the frame. And the way you control the frame is through questions. You ask better questions and people will give you different answers. And the people that are winning right now aren't focusing on the fear. They're not debating the fear. They're refocusing on the core motivation of the individual, because if somebody isn't motivated right now, you all need to write this shit down. If somebody isn't motivated right now, they're not going to move. You ain't going to change that shit. It's not going to happen. It just is what it is. Rather, what we can do is we can find out, man, what is the motivation that somebody's going through? What is the pain they're running from? And that's where I begin to use Tell Me More. You see, I think Tell Me More, when used correctly, gives somebody permission to share their story, to share their thoughts. And I'm going to focus on what is the pain that they're running from? What is that they're hurting from? And almost always, and again, if you want to write these words down, it's the D's: death, debt, divorce, disaster, disease. Almost always when we look at the people that are looking to do something, those are the people that are looking to do something right now. Not always. And I think in this market, it's probably 75-25. 75% of the people doing something are going through some hell. 25% are either buying their first home, they're excited about it, although it kind of sucks paying at the rates they're at, or they're making a lateral move, or they're maybe making an upgrade, but it's not most people right now. What's really cool about this is, even if you're talking to somebody who's going through some of the greatest moments of their life, they just got a job promotion, their business is booming, they're making great money. Doesn't this strategy work either way? You see, I think the simplest thing that we have to get back to is putting humans and their stories and them at the center of the conversation. It's really difficult. I frankly have never seen somebody fail in sales if they're good at putting somebody at the center of the conversation, because it's really hard to mess up at that point. There are some mistakes that people will make. There's one more thing we're going to hit on in a few minutes which is how do you take great conversations and turn them into appointments and into actionable next steps. But I really hope what you're taking away today is you got to get back to your heartbeat. How do you serve and love and care for others? And I think it starts with focusing on what is happening to them. What is the pain they're going through, their excitements? What are their feelings? And I'm just going to pay very little attention to the stuff about the market because nobody can control any of that. And what I've found is that almost always the more you pivot and reframe around them and their motivation, the things they're going through, what happens is the feelings regarding that grow and the fear of all that minutia shit shrinks to the point oftentimes where it's gone, it's displaced, because it's really tough for you to hold multiple feelings like that at the same time. It's really tough to keep that going in your head. You see, you will not motivate people. That is the trick in sales, y'all. You will never motivate people to go and do something. But you can find the motivated. And I am absolutely 1,000,000,000,000,000% confident with every ounce of my moral fiber and being that if you put them at the center of your conversation, it's the best strategy to finding out and make more sales, to finding out who is motivated. Last piece that we got to hit on today, which is how in the dang world do we take really good conversations, like we've been talking about? Hopefully these things help you have better conversations. How do we take that and how do we now turn it into some actionable next steps? First thing, I want to completely poo-poo on something real quick that a lot of you all do, which is something known as a saved search. And don't get me wrong, I think a saved search is really great, but far too many of you are using it as a crutch that you're reliant on. Here's what I mean by this is if you have a good conversation with a lead and it turns out they're wanting a bigger space because they're expecting a baby in 6 months, they need to buy a home, they want to get active in a month or two or maybe further, and you're sitting there and your next step, your next call to action is, well, I'm going to keep following up, I'm going to keep sending you listings, sending you homes, putting you on a safe search. If that is your value proposition, I'm going to say this very, very clearly. You're fucked. Absolutely screwed. And here's why. You see, what's really, really funny, and I think everybody should note this down, is that safe searches do one thing. They create property inquiries for your competition. Let me explain. Let's say I was having a conversation with the lead and they tell me all about what they want. I have a great idea. Like I said, baby on the way, and I put them on the safe search. The reality is this person's likely going to, if I'm lucky enough, first off, can we all recognize nobody's on one safe search? They've set up their own on multiple websites. They're on Zillow and Redfin or all these other websites. They're doing all these different things and they're on yours. So let's just assume, number one, you're lucky enough that yours is the email they opened. And it happens to be that the perfect house just came on the market. One, they're like, man, I couldn't have drawn it up any better. Price is great. Location is great. The vibe is, got that vibe check. It's all going great. And they open it up. And of course, they're probably doing it at work because who doesn't look at homes at work? And what they want to do is they want to go see it. And what's interesting is what I found is most people won't reach out to you and say, hey, I want to go see this house. No, they want to see it with their eyeballs. So you know what they do? They get in the car and on their way home from work, and we need to recognize most people are buying or looking to buy a home close to where they live or work right now. So they leave work and they do this crazy thing that you and I would all do, which is you drive past that house. And for those that are smart, you're probably already starting to check on or catch on that. The problem with that is when they drive past that house, they're loving the neighborhood. Vibe check is off the charts. They're loving it. They see kids outside. They're like, this is where we want to be. Do you think they pull out their phone and send an email to the person? Do you think they reply to that email like, oh, I got to reach out to Robby, who I spoke to for 5-10 minutes? No, see, there's something that's sitting in the front yard known as the sign. And what happens is most people don't know how real estate works. You see, they think that the person that has that sign in the yard is likely the person that sent them that home. Consumers don't know any different. And how fun educating them on this, it will never happen. So what ends up happening is they see that sign in the yard, and that's an easier path. So what they do is they take out their phone, they send a text to that company, and they go to their website, or they call or text them. And next thing you know, some schmuck like me, some ISA is answering the phone and having a conversation. And they're like, they're telling me about this house. Hey, we really love it. You sent it to me. And I'm sitting here saying, oh, I'm so glad that you got it. I'm looking them up in the CRM and I realize, man, they're not there. And I'm like, oh, wait, by the way, remind me again, how did you find out about this place? And like, oh, you sent it to me. And I just smiled. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you got it. You see, people don't know how that works. You see, safe searches, what they do is they create property inquiries for your competition. And very frankly, the reason I figured this out is when I was asking that question, that's how people, when I was in ISA and taking the sign calls, that's how people, when I'd ask, how did you find this place? A good amount of the time, they say, well, you sent it to me. And again, they weren't in my database. I didn't send them anything. It's a stupid strategy. I just realized that save search is SS and stupid strategy is SS. So save search is a stupid strategy. No, you see, I want everybody to write down something. I firmly believe that if somebody is motivated enough to make a move anytime in the near future, we got to get face-to-face to win. Period. We have to get face-to-face to win. If we don't get face-to-face for some type of an appointment, some people call it a buyer consult, listing consult, a buyer strategy session, a seller strategy session. I don't care. If you don't get in for one of those, either a buyer strategy session, a consult, or a seller strategy session or consult, you are not going to win as many leads as you should. Other people, schmucks like me, will come and snipe your opportunities all day long. So how do we do it? I want everybody to write down these four key phrases / words in this order. Number one is their story. RE-their story. Ownership there. THEIR. Their story. Give yourself some space. Write down number 2 underneath it, a few lines down, so you can again write some notes. Number 2 is herd effect. HERD, as in a herd of bison, or as most of y'all say, bison. Herd effect. HERD effect. Third, write down game plan / session. And then number 4, write down value ? Not value question, just a value ? Like, let me explain what all these mean. Number 1 is, if I've been having a really good conversation, what I'm going to do when I want to transition to taking action, first off, y'all, always be closing is dead. Dead, gone, trash, not good. We had 2 years where things were transactional for a little bit again. That shit's gone. Always be closing is dead. You see, I think instead it's being replaced with always being curious, connecting, and collaborating. Replace closing with collaborating. You need to be collaborating with people. And I found that if I want to advocate for collaborating towards solving somebody's problem, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect back the key parts of their story. You see, read their story. The RE stands for rephrase, reflect, and remind. And if you're a Stephen Covey fan from back in the day, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I stole this from him, and it's been one of the greatest hacks I've learned, which is if you want to make people feel heard and motivated, rephrase things back to them that they've said and reflect back the feeling. So read their story simply means that I want to say something in 1, 2, or 3 sentences that encapsulates their motivations, what they're going through. Things like, man, if I were in an apartment with a crappy landlord like you, I'd want to get out too. I'm hitting on the feeling. I'm rephrasing their story back to them in my own words. And if you rephrase and reflect, what happens is it reminds them of why they want to do something. It literally activates the part of their mind that stimulates action, and they want to do something to solve their problem. I'm going to read their story. Number 2, herd effect. I'm going to say what I've done to help other people like you, what I've done to help other first-time buyers like you, what I've done to help other people moving out of the area, what I've done to help people navigate this crazy market. Just insert who they are and what they want to do. And you simply say, what I've done to help others like you. And the reason it's called herd effect is humans are a hell of a lot more likely to do something if they know others like them have already done it. Why do you think reviews exist? Other people that wanted this product also said this was good. What I've done to help other people like you, it disarms them and is a catalyst for action. Number 3, game plan and strategy session. Basically, what I'm going to say is what I've done for other first-time buyers just like you is scheduled a sit-down, quick strategy session. And the whole point of it is to create a game plan to get you out of your current rental and into your first home as soon as possible. Notice that I didn't talk any specifics. I'm literally using scheduled a strategy session to create a game plan to help you get what you want. You take that framework and you just plug in those things, just like we've been doing so far. And what you're doing now is you're tying together pain and motivation with solution. It's now tied together. Now, there's a lot of sales gurus that don't do shit, that aren't actually that good. And they'll say things like, then you should say, when would be a good time for you to meet? Tuesday tonight at 2 or maybe at 7. You give 2 options or something like this, and it's stupid. Rather, I ask a very psychologically inclined question here, and that question is, do you think that's something you'd find some value in? You see, the reason this works is when I'm asking that, I'm not asking for a commitment at that point. And humans are a hell of a lot more nervous about making a commitment than giving an opinion. And all I've done when I say, is that something you find some value in, is I'm asking for an opinion. But if you do this right, if you take the time to understand what they want, you have a good conversation for 10 plus minutes or more, you find out what they need, want, desire, the pain they're going through, you tie it all together, you read their story, you use herd effect, and then strategy session / game plan, and you say, is that something you find some value in? Almost always they simply say, yeah, I think so. And the reason they do that is you've literally crafted a customized solution in their mind to their complex problem. When they say, yeah, that's something that I find some value in, or yeah, I think so, then I follow up with, great, when would be a good time for you to sit down for an hour? And what we need to recognize is the moment they said, yeah, I'd find some value in that, their identity changed. And Robert Cialdini talks about this in a couple different books, Persuasion and Influence. I think some of the best books you can read about psychology and sales. But he talks about how people want to be consistent with their word. And the moment someone says, I find value in that, their identity has changed from being someone who wouldn't find value in that to I, Robby, would find value in partaking in a strategy session to solve this problem. Therefore, when I asked when would be a good time for you to swing by our office for an hour or so, or meet at Caribou Coffee, whatever the heck you want to go and do, and I'll probably realize this, you can take this and craft it and customize it to change it to different actions, different things, use the same concept. But what happens is people literally can't say no. And they can't say no because you've customized this to them. They want to be consistent with their own word. There was a quick story to support this. There was a sociology / political science psychology study done where they went up and down a street, and imagine there's 100 homes on each side of the street, similar homes on each side, very similar demographics. And on one side of the street, they took one tactic to get people to support a campaign. On the other, same campaign, same stats, same everything, same naming, but they took a different tactic. On the right-hand side of the street, they went out to people's doorsteps and they said, hey, I'm with blank and blank, or I'm with the Safer Neighborhoods campaign. Would you be willing to show your support for safer neighborhoods by putting a sign in the yard? And what ended up happening was most people said no. Because putting a sign in your yard is a pretty big commitment. It's a visual commitment. Your neighbors see it. So most people said no. On the left-hand side of the street, the opposite side, again, same demographics, same campaign. They went up and said, hey, I'm with the Safer Neighborhood campaign. And I was just wondering, would you be willing to show your support for safer neighborhoods by signing this petition? Much more private, much more small of an ask, not a commitment. Takes 2 seconds. What did most people do? Sure, I'll support safer neighborhoods. Most people end up signing. Then what's really interesting is they then ask, by the way, since you're a supporter of safer neighborhoods, would you be willing to put a sign in the yard to show your support? And what do you think most people said? Of course. Yeah, sure. The campaign was completely fictitious. All of it was made up. There was no real campaign. And you're making the same ask, but you're asking it very differently. You see, I believe what this really teaches is that if you ask for a mile, you're not likely to get an inch. If you get an inch, you're a lot more likely to get a mile. Getting somebody to move that first inch is the most difficult. Once you get them to move an inch, it's a lot easier for them to move the remaining 11. That's how we have to do this. That's why I teach the value question. Is that something you find some value in? And then I say, when would be a good time to meet? Let's put a bow on all of this, y'all. I think we're at, honestly, a inflection point for a lot of people in this game. There's 2 types of people in here. There's those that when I'm teaching you all this, you probably heard it before and you're being reminded of it. And you're like, thank God, or maybe that's why I've been struggling, and you're pointing back to it and you're like, oh, I need to get back to those things. I need to humanize them again. And then there's another whole group of people that came in June of 2020 or beyond, and you don't know what the hell real estate actually is. And that's not your fault. You were playing a game in a fake market. You were playing basketball on a little Tykes hoop, and you thought you were MJ, and I don't blame you, man. I could windmill dunk on the little Tykes hoop. But then the height got raised to 10 feet, and then I remembered I'm 5'10". Sometimes I lie and say 5'11". And I'm white. I ain't dunking anytime soon. What we need to realize is sometimes what we need to do is let go of models that were outdated. And that model that's very transactional is outdated. I'm begging and pleading with you all is put humans at the center of the conversation. I have nothing to sell you today. I have this calling in my heart to share this. And I think you can go sell way more homes. The irony of it is you care less about selling homes and you put them at the center of the conversation and making them feel safe, heard, and valued. And this crazy ass thing happens. You sell a shit ton more homes. The best producers, people selling stupid amount of homes, making millions of dollars in this game, the ones that I see doing it, this is the strategy that's almost always at the foundation of what they're doing. This is the secret in this game. Put other people first. And I promise you that you will start winning. Be found today to be valuable. Ask 2 simple things. Share it. give me some feedback. Let me know. I like to know if things helped. Go out and share it. Let me know. Send it to a friend, a coworker. Say, man, you got to listen to this. You will get the recording of this. That's my only ask for you all. Get out there, do good, treat people well, be a better listener, love people better, be more empathetic. I promise if you do that, you're going to weather the storm a lot more easily than a lot of people right now that are getting a part-time job. They're going to be leaving the game. Much love, y'all. See ya.